we have some breaking news, some stunning news out of London. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the former Prince Andrew, has been arrested.
Well, it offers a great contrast, I think. Look what the British government is doing in light of the evidence, and look what the United States government's doing. Nothing.
On the latest chapter of the Epstein saga, a scandal decades in the making, it appears, well, outside the United States, that real consequences are materializing.
Presumably in connection with his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Police here in the UK put out a statement. They haven't named him specifically, but they are saying a man in his 60s has been arrested. As part of the investigation, they say we have today arrested a man in his 60s from Norfolk on suspicion of misconduct in public office.
President Trump was asked about Andrew this morning in London.
I don't know Prince Andrew, but that's a tough story. It's a very tough story. I don't know him, no.
President Trump has been photographed with Prince Andrew as far back as the year 2000. He is seen here alongside the Prince and First Lady at his Mar-a-Lago estate. Epstein was also at that.
This week, former Prince Andrew was arrested in the United Kingdom on suspicion of misconduct in public office tied to his association with Epstein over sharing privileged government information with the convicted trafficker while he was a UK trade envoy. Now, we'll await more details before speculating what the arrest is in full reference to, but it does appear that law enforcement action flows from evidence in the Epstein files. And this follows on from news out of Norway that their former prime minister was charged with, quote, aggravated corruption after a police probe into his alleged ties to the late sex offender.
Les nouvelles révélations dans l'affaire Epstein continuent d'avoir des répercussions en Europe. Ce jeudi, la police norvégienne a perquisitionné les propriétés de l'ancien Premier ministre Thorbjørn Jagland.
It was confirmed to CNN that he was, quote, charged with aggravated corruption before the law firm representing the former PM added that they deny all charges. And this isn't just isolated to royalty or former prime ministers, but the private sector also. We noticed last week that Goldman Sachs' chief legal officer resigned after emails revealed a long time and continued relationship with Epstein after his conviction in 2008. So what we're seeing at the moment anyway is momentum of accountability that matters, right? For years, Epstein and his circle operated with shocking impunity, shielded by powerful defenders and political leverage. The fact that some consequences seem to be materializing, albeit nowhere near enough, as we can all agree, it signals that, at the very least, once hidden records are forcing institutions to confront uncomfortable realities. But then that poses a question, right? What about what the Trump administration are doing and how they're handling questions regarding those very same files?
We keep hearing our press secretary and our Department of Justice and other government officials saying they're moving on from this. I wish that we could. I met Epstein and Maxwell when I was 21 years old. I'm nearly 53 now. We cannot move on as survivors of this crime and as citizens of this nation without changing this narrative. So I ask you all to stand behind us and demand accountability for our government, because we certainly are going to.
Well, after Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act requiring the release of all government Epstein documents, which President Trump signed into law, but the rollout has been terrible to say the least, and it's been criticized as tardy and heavily redacted. Critics have argued that the Department of Justice, helmed by Attorney General Bondi at Trump's direction, has used victim privacy and national security as reasons to just slow the pace and obscure substantive material. Because here's what it looks like, right? While you have legal systems in the United Kingdom moving towards consequences, the US executive branch appears more focused on managing optics and shifting the conversation towards unrelated things.
Want to know your reaction to this news? Out of the UK this morning, the former Prince Andrew arrested.
Well, it offers a great contrast, I think. Look what the British government is doing in light of the evidence, and look what the United States government's doing. Nothing. Our chief law enforcement officer is defending and obstructing the investigation, Bondi. And so it has been Congress in getting subpoenas and then passing bills and fighting to get this information disclosed, and our own executive, President Trump, Pam Bondi, and others are obstructing that effort. So it is refreshing that the British government is coming forward and actually, and the king is actually saying, we need to follow the law here. I wish our government were doing this.
Like the economy or the Dow, rather than highlighting the need for justice for victims or transparency in a high-profile criminal network.
I provided the evidence today that shows that his statements were false under oath. Kash Patel's statements were false. They are in possession. They were in possession at the time, and they're still in possession of evidence that other men participated in the sex trafficking.
Attorney General Bondi didn't seem to directly answer that question. And what do you make of what she did say?
She didn't answer anything. She came here just ready to talk about the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ, which seems kind of crazy to me.
Was the president aware of Secretary Lutnick's ties to Epstein when he chose him to lead the Department of Commerce? Was he aware?
Chris Malin was a Border Patrol agent.
Okay, so I'm going to conclude that the president, in fact, did know about his ties because he was the next door neighbor.
Shame on you.
Oh, for goodness sakes. This is pathetic. This is pathetic, Mr. Chair. I am not asking trick questions here. The American people have a right to know the answers to this. These are senior officials in the Trump administration. This is not a game, Secretary.
I'm Attorney General.
My apologies. I couldn't tell.
I mean, think about that shocking hearing again where Pam Bondi was asked point blank how many of the victims present at the hearing she'd spoken to or questioned after promising complete transparency and accountability before even coming into her position of power. The answer was none.
Now, would the survivors and victims who are here please stand up one more time? Just by show of hands, how many of you or your loved ones actually have met with the Department of Justice and provided testimony and estimate and evidence? None. And of those of you who have not met, which is everyone, how many of you have reached out either individually or through a lawyer or representative to offer to provide testimony and evidence? All of them. And of those of you, all of you who have reached out, how many of you were denied or ignored by the Department of Justice? All of them. And despite the shameful and despicable efforts by Ms. Bondi and her department to intimidate you, how many of you are still willing to speak to the Department of Justice? All of them. Well, Ms. Bondi, it looks like you have some more witnesses to talk to.
And whenever Trump is asked about it, he attacks the reporters and calls it a Democratic hoax.
Something that people care about. Yeah, what did you say? Go ahead.
What would you say to the survivors?
You are the worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you. You know, she's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile on your face. You know why? You know why you're not smiling? Because you know you're not telling the truth. And you're a very dishonest organization. And they should be ashamed of you. Okay, go ahead.
You mentioned health care. And the bill that was just passed does not include your health care savings account. So this is a question for you and maybe for Mr. Speaker as well.
I'm so proud of the health care savings accounts because it's going to happen.
A narrative that falls apart considering Bill and Hillary Clinton have agreed to testify later this month after Trump officials like Pam Bondi have tried to what about Bill their way around questions as to why Trump is mentioned so much in the files.
Well, we know he was on the plane, not only on the plane a couple times, multiple times. He traveled internationally with Jeffrey Epstein. And he was on the plane called the Lolita Express because it supposedly had a bed in there where Jeffrey Epstein had young girls. He has been a friend of his, a continuing friend of his for years and years. Contrast that with Donald Trump.
And their actions are reflected in the polls. The American people are extremely dissatisfied by the way that the Trump administration has handled the Epstein files. A YouGov poll shows that the majority of Americans disapprove of how Trump has managed the Epstein investigation, with net job approval on this issue running deeply negative. More than half, well above those who approve, say they believe Trump is trying to cover up Epstein's crimes.
A law was passed in Congress to require that all the files that have anything to do with them be released. And what we're seeing, I think it's fair to say, is a continuing cover-up by the Trump administration. In fact, when the Attorney General testified last week, it was quite a scene because she refused to answer questions. She diverted attention away from the matters at hand. She refused to look at the survivors. So there's something about this administration's attitude toward this, which I think really leads us to conclude they have something to hide. We don't. We have been willing to say whatever we know. We've even done it under oath.
And a Reuters Ipsos poll found that roughly 69% of Americans believe the Epstein files demonstrate that powerful people are rarely held accountable. And a majority think that the federal government is withholding information. And that's a poll that is damning, right? Because these figures illustrate not just partisan dissatisfaction, but they actually cut across independents and even portions of the Republican voter base. In other words, this is not a fringe view. It is a broad public discontent with the delayed transparency and uncertainty about any accountability and the merited skepticism that the most powerful actors are being treated differently than everyone else.
Donald Trump's name is all over these files. All over it. I mean, thousands and thousands of times. If you spend any real time with these files, you will see references to 17-year-old girls, 16-year-old girls, 14-year-old girls, 11-year-old girls, 10-year-old girls, and I saw a reference today to a 9-year-old girl. So it is a really gruesome and grim story. And I think in order to see our way through this and to try to make progress on criminal investigation and prosecution and some kind of social redemption from this whole nightmare, we need to listen to the survivor.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.